I'm gonna say it. Bentley, Lamborghini, even Rolls-Royce in the SUV business? Absolutely ridiculous. But where did they get such a preposterous idea? Now, before we go and do something foolish like blaming the more pedestrian Cayenne, the real culprit is this Cayenne. You see, the combination of a lot of power and a very expensive vehicle that is supposed to be practical is the very definition of ridiculous. But this is where Porsche has pulled the proverbial rabbit out of a hat that other companies want to follow. Yes, it's the most expensive Cayenne on offer, but it's the one that sells the best. They can't build enough of these things. Which brings us to the paradox of the Cayenne Turbo. Yes, completely ridiculous, but for the better part of 20 years, also beautifully balanced. So with that, today you and I are going to drive the latest flavor of balanced ridiculousness. Well, this doesn't exactly suck, now does it? This is probably about as good a place as any to understand pulling power in a lightweight sport package turbo Cayenne Coupe. Bist du fertig? Ich auch. Oh, Santa Maria Madre de Dios. The scenery only kind of helps in that it's guardrails, but otherwise this is the same pulling power, pushing power, because it is all-wheel drive, as we experienced in the last derivation of this thing. Together, you and I have driven now 3 Mercedes with a fancy-dancy, newfangled 48-volt electrical system. That said, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is the Porsche you are looking at has a 48-volt electrical system. The bad news is it is only contained to the suspension, the rear at that. You see, the 48-volt electrical system works here on the active roll bars as part of the PDCC. And what the Porsche engineers needed was more power, and so they decided to install a DC to a DC converter, 12-volt to 48-volt, where they needed that extra power. Now, I am a huge fan of these 48-volt systems because I have a hope that they will reduce the complexity of vehicles like these and increase their reliability. So you can imagine my next question to my Porsche engineering friend was, hey man, when are we going complete 48-volt? I didn't get a no, but I got a very honest, it's really expensive to make the entire car 48-volt, but it's something I can say that we're working on. Now, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, I think this is going to happen in a 992 first, because that's where they're saying they're adding electrification, but more importantly, I'm a big believer in don't listen to what people say, look at their actions, and the action on the 992 is they changed the bodywork there to allow for more electrification. That's just me futuring. I would love to tell you that there is a huge difference in the way this thing goes around these sharper corners like this. But at the end of the day, the thing that's doing the most work is not the lower body, is not the changed dimensions, it's the PDCC. And if you remember, that was these very funky active roll bars that counter the body roll. So I push around here. Notice I don't get virtually any lean, and this is a 5,000-pound vehicle. One would imagine active aero is important on a vehicle of this size, and that would be a good assumption. However, it has a bigger impact when you add 107 additional horsepower over the next most powerful derivation of the Cayenne Coupe. You see, all of them have a spoiler that comes up 5 inches at anything above 56 miles an hour, and all of them have a gurney flap on that spoiler, but it's only the turbo that has a gurney flap that goes all the way to the edge, and that has 2 real impacts. Number 1, create more downforce, and number 2, to help the efficiency to work in conjunction with the shutters that open and close in the front of the vehicle. Much like an economy car, they open to allow more cooling for the system and the engine, and then they close to make the car go through the air more efficiently. The combination of those closed shutters and the longer gurney flap make the turbo more efficient going through the air than the lesser derivations. Okay, a rather unusual place for me to sit to discuss ride quality, but I feel it important, and not because of the obvious, this being a sort of practical vehicle with a fancy body put on top of it, and not because of the chassis control system. We already covered that stuff in other episodes. But the way this particular one is built, This one has the lightweight sport package, which means it's got 22-inch wheels. And sitting up there, you notice the difference in the wheels. It makes the ride more rough. It degrades the ride quality, especially on roads like this that my friend David is taking me for a ride on. But the question as it pertains to this, a sport activity vehicle or an SUV with a lot less you, is what does it do to your passengers in the back? And just look at me. Am I moving around as David drives more aggressively here? Not really. I don't feel a lot of pitch, squat, dive, and roll, but even as a passenger in the back, I do feel the degradation in the ride quality. So, net, why is this important? Your friends, your kids, whoever's going to sit back here, need to appreciate that you appreciate 911s, maybe ZR1s, Lotuses, something that's got more sporting aspirations because you chose the bigger wheels. And now, the complete opposite of aerodynamics, a hole in the roof. You see, all Cayenne Coupes come fitted with a fixed glass roof as standard, meaning you can see out of it, but you can't open it. So I went and found one of the engineers. I'm like, hey man, can you get any kind of sunroof in this thing, panoramic or otherwise? And the answer was a big none. And he's telling me that, well, it was a combination of the design, the slope of the roof, but also engineering, meaning they couldn't open the roof and still maintain the active aero. I'm thinking there was a way to do this, and let's do a straw poll here. How many of you, A, would want some sort of opening roof, and B, would you want that opening roof option in conjunction with the carbon fiber roof option? Let me know in the comments below or via our social media. MotoMan TV, all one word. MotoMan TV, all one word. I'd say this is a good place as any to discuss steering. And this is where I got to tell you the news. If one were to set up a Cayenne S with a lightweight sport package and those larger wheels, the wheel and tire size is the same between that and the turbo. If it was just a standard wheel setup between a turbo and the S, it would be different. But this one I've been driving, and I'd say probably half the day in this turbo, I don't know, there's something odd about the steering in this one. Pardon the interruption from behind the wheel of the lowly 434 horsepower Cayenne S, but the main difference in steering between the vehicle that you and I are currently driving, that real turbo, and this one is fitted with four-wheel steering and the other one ain't. That's why it feels different. Now, back to your regular scheduled program. And with that, let's take a break from practicality and focus on what made Porsche Porsche. Exhibit A, Luftgekühlt 6. This is not a car show, this is not a lifestyle event, and this is not a cruisin'. This is akin to a pilgrimage to Mecca, but a Mecca for people who love air-cooled Porsches. You see, there are 911s, there are 914s, there are rally cars, there are race car drivers, but there are also car designers from other car companies that are car freaks in the Porsche world that come to ogle at Porsches. There are cars that have dirt on them. There are cars that won races throughout many worlds. There's even a shrine dedicated to Porsche. There's even a look into the future. And what makes this even more interesting, it's the way it's set up. It's not a car show where there are cars in rows and rows and rows, and there's bebop music or whatever the hell there was when you saw 57 Chevys. But here's the part most people don't understand. Like any Woody Allen movie, it's not just the characters in the movie. New York City is a character unto itself. Well, the folks who plan Luftgekühlt, they have changed the location pretty much every year, and the location in which they showcase all of the cars that we love, that's as much of a character in this show as the 911s themselves. Yes, it is that time again to play your favorite game in mind, the options game with today's contestant. Neither one of these, and not even a 2020 Cayenne S Coupe, rather a full-fat 541 twin-turbocharged V8 Cayenne Turbo Coupe with a base price of $130,100. May I give you the same suggestion as last time we did this? Belt in, get comfortable, because we're going to be here a while. Not one, but 2 pages of options. Let's start with the first one, and this is the opposite as the last car, Lava Orange for $3,150. For the avoidance of doubt, I would choose chalk. Then there is Santa Maria Madre de Dios, the Houndstooth, which is sort of free. It comes in the lightweight sport package, which includes the carbon fiber roof, the carbon fiber trim on the dash, the Alcantara headliner, the Alcantara steering wheel, it's multifunction and heated, as well as the Sport Chrono package and the houndstooth, which, for the avoidance of doubt, is in this classic Porsche here, so it kind of proves the historical significance, for $11,570. For the avoidance of doubt, that's about $3,000 cheaper than the lightweight sport package we saw in that Cayenne S that we drove 2 weeks ago. Then we move on to the performance package. That includes the rear axle steer, incredibly important for all Cayennes, the sport exhaust system with the black tips, and the Porsche Torque Vectoring Plus. This also is a bit cheaper than we saw in the Cayenne S, $4,430. And a big theme going on here, yeah, they do give you something more than the engine. They give you a bunch of stuff fitted as standard in a turbo over that S. Then we move on to an option I just don't understand why you would get it in a car after you pay extra for a louder exhaust. Thermally and noise insulated glass for $1,120. Then 8-speed Tiptronic with stop, start function, and coasting, $0. Again, you don't even have a choice, so why list it? Porsche dynamic chassis control. This needs to be fitted as standard on any Cayenne because it makes these things drive the way they should. $3,590. Then this, once again, fitted with Porsche ceramic composite brakes. Now here's something that's different. Turbos, as we saw in the episodes we drove in Greece, a year and a half ago, those are fitted with those special finish rotors that look like mirrors after like a couple hundred miles, and they drastically reduce the output of the brake dust by like 90%. Well, they give you about a $4,000 credit towards the Porsche ceramic composite brakes, so they become $5,580. Then moving on, we go to the LED lights, which include the dynamic light system. That is $580. Then we move on to the park assist, $1,200. And then, of course, there's the soft closed doors at $790. Head-up display. This is standard on Kias that are a 20% of the price of this vehicle, but still $1,720. Give me a break, really? Night vision, $2,420. Okay, that's fair. Second page, lane change assist, $650. Comfort access, that's the thing in your pocket to walk up to the car and open the door without having to hit any buttons. That's optional on a $130,000 car. For $640. Then adaptive cruise control, $2,000. Ambient lighting, $690. The adaptive sport seats, that is free because once again, at the $104,000 mark, they give you the adaptive sport seats for free. And then an option I kind of geek out about, and not because of its functionality, rather its form from the back seat. It adds extra buttons. The 4-zone climate control for $990. And then last but not least, not a smartphone, not the smartphone connectivity, rather just the compartment for your smartphone is $690. To that, we add the delivery processing handling fee of $1,250 for a total vehicle price of $173,500. I'm just going to leave this here. You have a think on that. Before you and I part company in this episode, I feel the need to share a rather stark contrast that demonstrates the journey that the Cayenne has traveled over the past, say, 15 years. And to do this little exercise, I need you to put aside whether you agree with the concept of a swoopy arse end on SUVs, and if you agree with Porsche being in the Cayenne business at all. And also, let's not focus on the car we just drove, the 541 horsepower twin-turbo V8, because while this is the most wonderful, it's also the most ridiculous derivation of the Cayenne. You see, back in 2004, that role was taken by the Cayenne Turbo, which had a then otherworldly 450 horsepower in an SUV, which meant that very heavy car went 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds. Well, fast forward to 2019, and there's actually 3 derivations of the Cayenne Coupe. We've only driven 2 now. The most basic one is a V6 3-liter single turbo with a lowly 335 horsepower. But that Cayenne goes 0 to 60 in 5.6 seconds. And with that, bis später.